My name is Sophia Burns. I am 31 years old and I live in Philadelphia. My hand was shaking, but not because I was scared. It was shaking because I was holding back a laugh. I stood at the entrance of the Monarch Hotel's grand ballroom. Crystal chandeliers were glowing above us. Waiters in white coats were passing champagne. My mother, Patricia, was already smiling at the woman my brother, Garrett, was about to marry. Her name was Sloane Whitmore. She looked perfect in her silk dress, but her eyes were cold. As I walked closer, hoping for a simple hello, Sloane leaned toward her friend. She didn't whisper quietly enough. Her voice cut through the music like a knife. Look who finally showed up," Sloane said, rolling her eyes. "The stinky country girl is here. I bet she still smells like cheap soap." Her friend giggled. My mother heard it, but she just looked away, pretending I didn't exist. My chest tightened. The old shame tried to come back, the feeling that I was the mistake, the unrefined daughter from Millbrook, Pennsylvania. But then I looked up at the ceiling I had paid for. I looked at the marble floors I had chosen. Sloane didn't know the truth. She didn't know that the stinky country girl wasn't just a guest. I was the owner of the Monarch Hotel. And tonight, that whisper was going to cost her everything. But before I tell you how everything flipped like and subscribe, drop a comment. Where are you watching from? My name is Sophia Burns. I am 31 years old. To understand why I became a woman who builds hotels, you first have to understand the house where I wasn't allowed to take up space. I grew up in Millbrook, Pennsylvania. It is a town where the grass is green, the fences are white, and the secrets are buried deep inside the walls. Our house was on Elm Street. It was a 2-story beige house with black shutters. From the outside, it looked like the perfect American dream. There was a wreath on the door. There were flowers in the garden. My father, Robert, mowed the lawn every Saturday morning in diagonal stripes. But inside, the air was different. Inside, the air was heavy. It felt like holding your breath underwater, waiting for a pressure that never went away. My name is Sophia Burns, but for 18 years, I felt like my name was not Garrett. Garrett was my older brother. He was 2 years older than me. He was born first, and in my parents' eyes, he was the only one who mattered. He was the sun, and I was just a shadow that accidentally appeared on the wall. My mother, Patricia, was a woman who cared about appearances more than anything else. She was beautiful in a sharp, cold way. She always wore pearls. She always had her hair perfectly sprayed into place. She believed that if you looked perfect, your life was perfect. Garrett fit her picture. He was tall. He had broad shoulders and a smile that could charm a snake. He was the star quarterback of the high school football team. When he walked into a room, my mother's face would light up. She would touch his arm. She would ask him about his day. She would make him a steak. When I walked into a room, my mother would sigh. It wasn't a loud sigh. It was a small, quiet puff of air through her nose. It meant, "Oh, you're here," or it meant, "Fix your hair," or it meant, "Why aren't you better?" I wasn't a bad kid. I got good grades. I didn't drink. I didn't stay out late. I did all the chores. I vacuumed the living room until the carpet lines were straight. I washed the dishes until they squeaked. I folded the laundry. But I was plain. I had frizzy brown hair that refused to stay smooth. I was a little chubby as a teenager. I was quiet. I liked to read books about business and travel. I liked to imagine a world bigger than Millbrook. To my mother, being plain was a sin. I remember one dinner vividly. I was 16. It was a Tuesday. My mother had made meatloaf. We sat at the round wooden table in the kitchen. My father sat at the head. Garrett sat to his right. My mother sat to his left. I sat across from my father, at the spot where the table leg got in the way of your knees. "Garrett," my mother said, scooping a massive piece of meatloaf onto his plate. "Coach Miller told me he thinks you have a real shot at a scholarship this year. Isn't that wonderful, Robert?" My father nodded. He was a quiet man. He worked at the bank and came home tired. He usually just agreed with whatever my mother said. "That's good, son, real good." "I need new cleats though," Garrett said with his mouth full. "The Nike ones. They're $200. "We'll get them tomorrow," my mother said instantly. She didn't even look at the budget. She didn't hesitate. "You need the best equipment to perform your best." I looked down at my plate. My sneakers had a hole in the toe. I had been coloring the white sock underneath with a black marker so nobody would notice. I had asked for new shoes 3 months ago. My mother had told me to stop dragging my feet and they would last longer. "Mom," I said quietly. She didn't hear me. She was pouring gravy on Garrett's potatoes. "Mom," I said a little louder. She looked at me. Her eyes went flat. "What is it, Sophia? Don't interrupt when your brother is talking about his future. I got my report card today, I said. I got straight A's, and I got the highest score in the district on the math aptitude test. I waited. I wanted her to smile. I wanted her to say, "We'll get you a reward tomorrow." My mother put the gravy boat down. She looked at my father, then back at me. "That's nice, Sophia," she said. Her voice was bored. "But don't let it go to your head. Boys don't like girls who are too smart. It makes them intimidated. You should focus on home economics more. Learn to sew. Learn to be pleasant." Garrett laughed. He pointed his fork at me. "Yeah, Soph, nobody wants to date a calculator." My father chuckled. I felt the heat rise in my cheeks. It burned behind my eyes. I looked at the meatloaf on my plate. I wasn't hungry anymore. "May I be excused?" I whispered. "You haven't finished," my mother said. "Food is expensive, don't be wasteful." So I sat there. I ate the cold meatloaf while they talked about Garrett's cleats and Garrett's game and Garrett's prom date. I was sitting 3 feet away from them, but I was invisible. That was my life. I was the maid who lived in the guest room. The only person who saw me was my grandmother, Nana Rose. Nana Rose was my father's mother. She lived 3 streets away in a small cottage that smelled like lavender and old paper. She was the opposite of my mother. She didn't care about pearls. She wore comfortable sweaters and had dirt under her fingernails from her garden. I went to her house every day after school. It was my sanctuary. Nana Rose would make tea. We would sit on her back porch and watch the birds. "You are special, Sophia," she would tell me. She would hold my hand. Her skin was like dry paper, but her grip was strong. "You have a fire in you. They don't see it because they are looking at the surface. But I see it. You have a brain for big things." "Mom says I'm unrefined," I told her once, crying into her shoulder. "She says I'm a country girl who will never leave this town." Nana Rose hardened her jaw. "Your mother is a fool. She thinks the world ends at the county line. You are going to build things, Sophia. You are going to own things. I can feel it." Nana Rose was the only reason I didn't run away when I was 16. She was my anchor. But when I was 17, Nana Rose got sick. It happened fast. One day she was gardening, the next day she was in the hospital. It was cancer. I spent every moment I could at the hospital. My mother only visited once, and she spent the whole time complaining about the smell of the disinfectant. Garrett never came. He said hospitals creeped him out. I held Nana's hand when she took her last breath. It was 3 a.m. on a rainy Tuesday. "Be brave," she whispered to me. Those were her last words. "Don't let them keep you small." When she died, the house on Elm Street became a prison. The silence was louder. The criticism was sharper. The breaking point, the moment that shattered my heart and turned it into stone, happened 2 weeks after the funeral. Nana Rose didn't have much money, but she had a jewelry box. In that box was a silver necklace with a sapphire pendant. It wasn't a diamond. It wasn't worth thousands of dollars, but it was beautiful. It was a deep ocean blue. Nana always wore it. She told me once, "This was the first thing my husband ever bought me. It represents true love." In her will, she left my jewelry collection to my granddaughter. She didn't write my name. She just wrote granddaughter. I was the only granddaughter. It was obvious. I came home from school on a Friday. I was 18 now. I was graduating in 2 months. I was still grieving. I missed Nana every single hour of every single day. I walked into the living room. The TV was on. My mother was sitting on the beige sofa. Sitting next to her was Ashley. Ashley was Garrett's girlfriend of the month. She was exactly the kind of girl my mother loved. She was blonde. She was thin. She was the captain of the cheerleading squad. She had a high, giggly laugh that sounded like glass breaking. "Oh, Mrs. Burns, you're so sweet," Ashley was saying. I stopped in the doorway. My mother was holding Nana Rose's sapphire necklace. The silver chain caught the light from the window. "It brings out your eyes, dear," my mother said. Her voice was warm, the warmth she never used with me. "Blue on blue. It's perfect." My stomach dropped. I felt like I had been punched. "Mom," I said. My mother looked up. She didn't look guilty. She looked annoyed that I had interrupted. "Sophia," she said, "you're home early." I looked at the necklace in her hands. She was fastening it around Ashley's neck. Ashley was smiling, touching the stone with her perfectly manicured fingers. "That's Nana's," I said. My voice was shaking. I tried to steady it, but I couldn't. "That's Nana's necklace." "Yes," my mother said calmly. "I wanted Ashley to have it. She's going to the prom with Garrett tomorrow night. She needs something special to wear." But I couldn't breathe. Nana left her jewelry to me. The will said granddaughter. My mother stood up. She smoothed her skirt. She looked at me with a cold, pitying expression. Sophia, be realistic, she said. Ashley is practically family. Garrett is going to marry her one day, and let's be honest. That necklace is delicate. It's elegant. It needs to be worn by someone who can carry it. She didn't say the words "you are fat and ugly," but she didn't have to. The words hung in the air between us. Ashley giggled. She looked at me, then looked at the mirror on the wall. It really is pretty, Sophia. Don't be jealous. I'll take good care of it. Jealous? I wasn't jealous. I was devastated. That necklace was the last piece of Nana I had. It was the physical proof that someone had loved me, and my mother was giving it away to a cheerleader just to impress her son's girlfriend. She was stealing my inheritance. She was stealing my memory. Take it off, I said. My mother's eyes widened. Excuse me, take it off, I said louder. It's mine. Nana wanted me to have it. Don't you dare raise your voice in this house, my mother snapped. Her face turned red. You are being selfish. Ashley is a guest. You are embarrassing me. I don't care, I screamed. It was the first time I had ever screamed at her. It's mine. You treat me like I don't exist. You treat me like garbage. But that was Nana's love, and you can't give it away. My father walked in from the kitchen. He was holding a sandwich. What is all this noise? He asked. Your daughter is having a tantrum, my mother said, pointing at me. She's demanding I take the necklace off Ashley's neck. She's acting like a child. My father looked at me, then he looked at the TV. He didn't want to deal with this. Sophia, he said tiredly, listen to your mother, it's just a necklace. Don't make a scene, just a necklace. I looked at my father, I looked at my mother. I looked at Ashley, who was smirking, touching the blue stone at her throat. I realized then that I wasn't a daughter to them. I was a tenant. I was a burden. They didn't love me, they tolerated me, and they would strip me of everything I had if it meant making Garrett or anyone connected to Garrett happy. Something inside me broke, but it wasn't a loud break. It was a quiet snap. Like a dry twig in winter, I stopped crying. I wiped my face with the back of my hand. Okay, I said. My mother looked surprised. Okay, you're right, I said. My voice was very calm. It scared me a little. It looks better on her. My mother smiled. It was a smug, victorious smile. See, I knew you would be reasonable. Now go set the table for dinner. Garrett will be home from practice soon. I nodded. I will. I turned around and walked up the stairs. My legs felt heavy, but my mind was clear. I walked into my bedroom. It was a small room painted a dull yellow. I looked around. I didn't see a home. I saw a cage I had outgrown. I pulled my old duffel bag from under the bed. I didn't pack everything. I didn't want everything. I wanted to travel light. I packed 3 t-shirts, 2 pairs of jeans, my comfortable sneakers, my underwear, my toothbrush. I reached into the back of my sock drawer. There was a white envelope there. Inside was $200. It was money I had saved from babysitting the neighbor's kids and cleaning Mrs. Gable's gutters. I had been saving it for a senior trip, but this was a different kind of trip. I took the framed photo of Nana Rose from my nightstand. I wrapped it carefully in a t-shirt and put it in the bottom of the bag. That was it. That was 18 years of life packed into one bag. I waited until I heard the front door open downstairs. I heard Garrett's booming voice. Hey Mom, practice was killer. What's for dinner? Steak, honey, my mother yelled. And look at Ashley. Look at the necklace. Wow, Ash, Garrett said. You look hot. I put the strap of the duffel bag over my shoulder. I walked out of my room. I walked down the hallway. I walked down the stairs. They were all in the kitchen. I could see them through the doorway. They were laughing. My father was opening a beer. My mother was serving the steak. Ashley was leaning on Garrett. They looked like a family, a complete happy family, a family that didn't need me. I walked to the front door. I hesitated for 1 second. I thought about saying goodbye. I thought about yelling one last time. But I knew they wouldn't hear me. They never heard me. So I opened the door. The evening air rushed in. It smelled like rain and asphalt. I stepped out. I closed the door behind me. I didn't slam it. I closed it gently with a click. That click was the loudest sound I had ever heard. It was the sound of a book closing. It was the sound of a chain breaking. I walked down the driveway. I passed my father's car. I passed the perfectly mowed lawn. I started walking toward the bus station. It was 3 miles away. It started to rain. The water soaked through my thin jacket. It mixed with the tears on my face. But as I walked, my steps got faster. I wasn't not Garrett anymore. I wasn't the clumsy daughter. I wasn't the unrefined girl. I was just Sophia. And for the first time in my life, I was free. I bought a ticket for the first bus leaving town. The destination on the sign said Philadelphia. I climbed onto the bus. I sat in the back row near the window. As the bus pulled away, I watched the lights of Millbrook fade into the darkness. I touched my chest. My heart was beating hard. I was terrified. I had no job. I had no apartment. I had no friends. But I had $200. And I had Nana Rose's voice in my head. You are going to build things. I leaned my head against the cold glass window. Just watch me, I whispered to the darkness. Just watch me. The bus ride to Philadelphia took 4 hours. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. My mind was racing, replaying the look on my mother's face when she put that necklace on Ashley. Every time the bus hit a bump, my stomach twisted. Was I making a mistake? Should I go back and apologize? But then I remembered the click of the front door. The sound of my freedom. I couldn't go back. I had burned the bridge, and the only way forward was through the smoke. When I stepped off the bus, the city hit me like a physical blow. It was loud, it was dirty. It smelled of exhaust fumes, old garbage, and pretzel salt. People were rushing everywhere, shouting into phones, honking horns. Nobody looked at me. In Millbrook, everyone stared. Here I was invisible. It was terrifying. It was perfect. I had $140 left after buying the ticket and a sandwich at a rest stop. $140. That was nothing. It wasn't rent. It wasn't food for a month. It was a ticking clock. I slept in a women's shelter for the first 3 nights. It was a brick building with barred windows. The beds were narrow cots in a large room filled with 20 other women. Some were crying. Some were talking to themselves. I hugged my duffel bag tight against my chest, terrified someone would steal Nana's picture. I didn't sleep much. I stared at the ceiling and made a promise to myself. This is temporary. This is just the starting line. On the 4th day, I found the Starlight Inn. It was on the outskirts of the city, near the industrial district. It was a sad, gray building with a neon sign that flickered. The S and the T were burnt out, so it just said Arlight Inn. I walked into the lobby. The carpet was a faded maroon color, sticky in places. The air smelled like stale cigarettes and lemon cleaner. Behind the desk sat a man with thick glasses and a stain on his tie. His name was Mr. Henderson. "Can I help you?" he asked without looking up from his crossword puzzle. "I need a job," I said. My voice was shaky, so I cleared my throat and said it again louder. "I need a job. I can clean. I can do laundry. I can work nights." He looked up then. He saw my wrinkled clothes. He saw the desperation in my eyes. He probably saw a dozen girls like me every year. "We need a maid," he grunted. $7 an hour, no benefits. "You start tomorrow at 6 a.m. "I can start now," I said. He blinked. "Suit yourself. Grab a uniform from the closet in the back. It might be big on you." It was big on me. The gray dress hung off my shoulders like a sack. I looked like a child playing dress-up. But when I put it on, I felt a strange sense of pride. It wasn't a CEO's suit. It was a maid's uniform. But it was my uniform. I had earned it. That was the beginning. For the first 2 years, my life was a cycle of bleach and dirty towels. I learned the intimate secrets of strangers. I cleaned up after fights, after parties, after lonely nights. I found empty vodka bottles under beds. I found wedding rings left on nightstands. I scrubbed toilets until my knuckles were red and cracked. My back ached constantly. My feet swelled. But I worked harder than anyone else. The other maids did the bare minimum. They wiped around the dust. I moved the furniture. I cleaned the baseboards. I folded the towels into perfect swans, something I learned from a YouTube video at the library. Mr. Henderson noticed. "You're weird, kid," he told me one night while I was reorganizing the supply closet off the clock. "Why do you care so much? It's just a dump." "It's not a dump," I said. "It's a business. And if it's clean, people come back." He grunted, but the next week he made me the head housekeeper. I got a raise to $9 an hour. I moved out of the shelter and into a tiny studio apartment. It was the size of a closet. The radiator clanked and I had a roommate, a mouse I named Jerry. But it had a lock on the door. It was mine. I didn't just clean. I studied. I didn't have money for college, so the public library became my university. Every evening after my shift, I walked 10 blocks to the library. I read everything. Books on hospitality management, biographies of hotel moguls like Hilton and Marriott, textbooks on accounting and finance. I learned about RevPAR, revenue per available room. I learned about occupancy rates. I learned about EBITDA. I started looking at the Starlight Inn not as a maid but as a manager. I saw the leaks in the budget. We were spending too much on laundry detergent because the staff was using too much per load. We were losing customers because the check-in process took 10 minutes when it should take 2. One afternoon, I walked into Mr. Henderson's office. "We're losing $4,000 a month on unnecessary expenses," I said. I placed a spreadsheet on his desk. I had drawn it by hand on graph paper. He looked at it. He looked at me. "Who taught you this?" "I taught myself," I said. "If you let me manage the inventory and the front desk schedule, I can save you that money. If I do, give me 10% of the savings." He laughed. "You've got guts, Sophia." "I'm serious," I said. He agreed. 6 months later, the Starlight Inn was profitable for the first time in 5 years. 2 years after that, Mr. Henderson had a stroke. He recovered, but he was tired. He wanted to move to Florida to be with his grandkids. He wanted to sell the hotel. Nobody wanted to buy it. It was in a bad neighborhood. It was old. The banks laughed at the listing. I was 23 years old. I had saved $15,000. It wasn't enough to buy a car, let alone a hotel. But I knew the numbers. I knew the potential. I went to 5 banks. They all said no. They looked at my age. They looked at my address. They saw a cleaning girl playing pretend. "Honey," one loan officer told me, patting my hand, "why don't you try to find a husband? It's safer." I walked out of his office with my teeth clenched so hard my jaw hurt. Watch me, I thought, just watch me. I found a private investor. His name was Mr. Russo. He was a guest at the hotel, a contractor who stayed there when he had jobs in the city. He had seen me fixing the boiler at 2 a.m. He had seen me working the front desk, then running to clean a room, then doing the payroll. "You work like a demon," he told me one night over coffee in the lobby. "I work like I have nothing to lose," I corrected him. "Henderson wants to sell," Russo said. "You want to buy." "I do," I said, "but I need backing." "I'll loan you the down payment," Russo said. "High interest. If you miss one payment, I take the hotel and you walk away with nothing." "Deal," I said. I didn't even blink. I bought the Starlight Inn. The day I signed the papers, I went to the roof. I looked out at the gritty skyline of the industrial district. I wasn't Sophia the maid anymore. I was Sophia Burns, hotel owner. I renamed it the Birch. Trees grow slowly, but their roots are deep. I lived in the hotel for the next 3 years. I didn't take a salary. I reinvested every penny. I painted the rooms myself. I replaced the carpets. I hired better staff and paid them well so they cared about their jobs. I offered free breakfast with real coffee, not the instant sludge. Reviews started to change. "Hidden gem, cleanest room in the city." The owner personally greeted us, "Wonderful service." The Birch became a success. I paid off Mr. Russo in 2 years. Then I leveraged the equity to buy a second hotel, a failing motel near the airport. I turned that around in 18 months. Then a boutique hotel downtown. Then a resort in the Poconos. I was unstoppable. I worked 18 hours a day. I didn't date. I didn't take vacations. My business was my husband, my child, and my religion. 12 years passed since I stepped off that bus. I was 31 years old. I was the CEO of Birch Hospitality Group. I owned 6 luxury properties. My crown jewel was the Monarch Hotel, a 5-star historic landmark in the center of Philadelphia. It had crystal chandeliers, velvet curtains, and a lobby that smelled of fresh orchids. I had an office on the top floor with a view of the entire city. I wore tailored silk suits. I had a driver. I had respect. But I still had a hole in my chest the shape of my family. I hadn't seen them in 12 years. But I knew where they were. About 5 years into my success, I hired a private investigator to check on them. I told myself it was just curiosity. It wasn't. It was longing. The report was bad. My father had retired early due to a bad back. His pension was tiny. My mother was still spending money like they were rich, buying expensive clothes, getting her hair done weekly. But the real drain was Garrett. Garrett, the golden boy, had rusted. The report detailed a decade of failures. He flunked out of college. He started a gym that went bankrupt. He tried to be a real estate agent but never sold a house. He was currently working on a startup, which meant he was unemployed and living off my parents. They were drowning. They had taken out a second mortgage on the house on Elm Street. They were 3 months behind on payments. Foreclosure was looming. I sat in my office, reading the report. I looked at the photo of my childhood home. It looked smaller than I remembered. The paint was peeling. The grass wasn't mowed in diagonal stripes anymore. I should have let them sink. They kicked me out emotionally if not physically. They chose Garrett. They made their bed, but Nana Rose's voice was in my head. You have a big heart, Sophia. Don't let the world make it hard. I couldn't let them lose the house Nana had visited. I couldn't let my father be homeless. So I devised a plan. I couldn't just send them a check signed Sophia Burns. My mother was too proud. She would either refuse it out of spite, or worse, she would take it and then tell me it wasn't enough. I didn't want their gratitude, and I didn't want their toxic connection. I wanted to help them from behind a wall. I created a shell corporation called the Community Grant Foundation. I had my lawyer draft a letter stating that my parents had been selected for a legacy homeowners grant due to their standing in the community. It was a lie. A beautiful, expensive lie. Every month for the last 7 years, I sent a check for $3,000 to the house on Elm Street. It covered the mortgage. It covered the bills. It kept the lights on. I called them once a month. I used a burner phone. I kept the conversations short. Hello, my mother would answer. Her voice always sounded breathless, like she was in the middle of something important. Hi, Mom, it's Sophia. Oh, you, a pause. How are you? Are you still working at that motel? She thought I was still a maid at the Starlight Inn. I never corrected her. It was easier to let her believe I was failing. It fit her narrative. If I told her I was a CEO, it would shatter her worldview that Garrett was the successful one. Yeah, still there, I would say. Just cleaning rooms. Well, work is work, I suppose, she would say dismissively. We are doing wonderful, by the way, just wonderful. Garrett is on the verge of a huge breakthrough. He's networking with very important people. That's good, Mom. And we've been so blessed, she would continue. We received a grant, you know. Years ago, the foundation said we were pillars of the community. I honestly think Garrett nominated us. He knows so many people. He's such a good son, always looking out for us. I gripped the phone tight. My knuckles turned white. I was sitting in a $5,000 leather chair, looking at a skyline I practically owned, paying for the roof over her head. And she was thanking Garrett. That's nice of him, I would say through grit teeth. It is, she said. He's going to pay us back 10 times over once his ship comes in. He promised. Garrett's ship was never coming in. I was the ocean that kept them afloat, and they didn't even know I was water. It was a strange kind of torture. I was the savior and the outcast at the same time. Then came the call that changed everything. It was a Tuesday in October. My mother sounded different, excited, high-pitched. Sophia, you'll never guess. What is it? Garrett is engaged, she squealed. Finally, and oh, Sophia, she is perfect. Her name is Sloan Whitmore. She is from a very wealthy family in Texas. Oil money, I think, or maybe tech, but they are loaded. They stay at the Monarch, you know. My stomach flipped. The Monarch, my hotel. Is that right? I asked. Yes, they are staying in the presidential suite. Garrett says her father, Franklin, is going to invest in Garrett's business. This is it, Sophia. This is the big break. We're finally going to be the family we deserve to be. I felt a cold prickle on the back of my neck. Rich people didn't usually announce they were rich. And investors didn't usually invest in unemployed men with a history of bankruptcy just because they were dating their daughter. Have you met them? I asked. We're meeting them this weekend, she said. At the engagement party. It's at the Monarch. In the grand ballroom, you should come. She didn't ask me because she wanted me there. She asked me because she wanted an audience. I don't know if I can get off work, I lied. Oh, just ask your manager, she snapped. It's one night. Try to dress decent, Sophia. Wear something that covers your shape, and don't mention your job, just say you work in hospitality. It sounds better. Okay, Mom, I said, I'll be there. Good, Saturday at 7 p.m., don't be late. The Whitmores are very punctual people. I hung up. I sat there for a long time. I looked at the file on my desk, the quarterly revenue report for the Monarch Hotel. The Whitmores were staying in my presidential suite. I picked up my office phone. Wesley was my general manager at the Monarch. He was efficient, loyal, and terrifying to anyone who tried to cut corners. Yes, Miss Burns. Do we have a guest named Sloan Whitmore? Or Franklin Whitmore? I heard typing. Yes, ma'am, Mr. Franklin Whitmore. Checked in 3 days ago. Presidential suite. They booked the grand ballroom for a private event this Saturday. An engagement party. Who is paying for the room? I asked. It's on a credit card, Wesley said. A corporate card. Whitmore Holdings LLC. Flag it, I said. Don't decline it, just monitor it. And Wesley, yes, I'm coming to that party on Saturday. Wonderful, shall I set up the VIP table? No, I said. I'm not coming as the owner, I'm coming as a guest. Nobody is to acknowledge me as the CEO. Tell the staff. If anyone calls me Miss Burns, they're fired. I am just Sophia, I am just a nobody. Wesley paused. He knew me well enough to know when I was plotting something. Understood, is there a problem? I don't know yet, I said. But my brother is marrying this woman, and my mother thinks they are the answer to her prayers. I just want to see for myself. Very good, I'll brief the team, total anonymity. Thank you, Wesley. I hung up. I stood up and walked to the floor-to-ceiling window. I looked down at the city lights. I had built this empire in silence. I had hidden my success to protect myself from my family's greed. But now, they were bringing strangers into my house. Strangers who claimed to be rich. Strangers who were promising to save a family that I was already secretly saving. Something smelled wrong. It smelled like the bleach I used to use to scrub toilets. It smelled like a mess I was going to have to clean up. I touched the sapphire necklace at my throat. I had bought a replica of Nana's necklace years ago to remind me of her. I wore it every day. Okay, Nana, I whispered to the glass. Let's go see what the golden boy has found. I didn't know it then, but I was walking into a trap. Not a trap for me, a trap for them. And I was the only one holding the key. The night of the engagement party, the Monarch Hotel was glowing. As the owner, I usually looked at my hotel with a critical eye, checking for smudged glass, crooked paintings, or light bulbs that were slightly dim. But tonight, I wasn't looking at the building. I was looking at the people inside it. I arrived at 7:15 p.m. I purposely arrived 15 minutes late. In my family, being late was a sin, and I wanted to slip in when everyone was already distracted. I wasn't wearing my usual CEO attire. No sharp blazer, no power heels. I wore a navy blue dress I had bought off the rack at a department store 3 years ago. It was clean and respectful, but it was simple. It was the kind of dress a hotel worker would wear to a fancy event. I pulled my hair back into a low bun and wore minimal makeup. I wanted to be invisible. I wanted to be the background noise. I walked through the revolving doors. Michael, the head doorman, saw me immediately. He stiffened. His hands started to go up to tip his cap, a gesture of respect he only used for me and visiting dignitaries. I caught his eye and gave a microscopic shake of my head. I put a single finger to my lips. Michael was a pro. He froze, then relaxed his posture. He gave me a generic nod, the kind he gave to tourists. Good evening, miss. Good evening, I whispered. I walked into the lobby. The air smelled of white lilies and expensive cologne. The grand ballroom doors were open, spilling golden light and jazz music into the hallway. I took a deep breath. You are not the CEO right now, I told myself. You are Sophia, the sister, the disappointment. I walked in. The ballroom was magnificent. My team had outdone themselves. The centerpieces were towering arrangements of white orchids. The tablecloths were silver silk. There was an ice sculpture of a swan in the center of the buffet. And there, in the middle of it all, was my family. They looked uncomfortable. My father was wearing a tuxedo that looked like a rental. The sleeves were a little too long. He was holding a champagne flute with 2 hands, like he was afraid he might drop it. My mother was wearing a dress covered in silver sequins. It was too tight and too flashy. She looked like a disco ball. She was laughing too loudly at something a waiter said. And Garrett. Garrett was standing near the stage. He looked handsome, I had to admit. He had that classic jawline that made my mother swoon. But his eyes were darting around the room nervously. He was sweating. He looked like an actor who had forgotten his lines. Standing next to him was the woman I assumed was Sloane. She was stunning. She wore a white silk gown that clung to her body like water. Her blonde hair was a waterfall of perfect waves. She was laughing, tilting her head back to show off a long, elegant neck. But there was something sharp about her. Her eyes didn't smile when her mouth did. They scanned the room like radar, checking for threats or maybe checking for wallets. I took a breath and walked toward them. Sophia, it was Garrett. He spotted me first. He waved me over, looking relieved to have a distraction. You made it, he said. He hugged me loosely. He smelled of expensive cologne, too much of it and nervous sweat. I wasn't sure you'd get the time off. I managed, I said. You look nice, Garrett. Thanks, he said, puffing out his chest. This is crazy, right? Look at this place. Can you believe I'm marrying into this? It's impressive, I said. My mother appeared at my elbow. She looked me up and down, her lips pursed. Well, she said, at least you wore blue, it hides the wrinkles. Hi, Mom, I said. Don't embarrass us, she hissed in my ear. The Whitmores are royalty. Franklin Whitmore is worth millions. Don't talk about your job, just smile and nod. I know the drill, I said. Garrett turned to the woman in white. Sloane, babe, come here, this is my sister. Sloane turned. Her eyes landed on me. It was instantaneous, the assessment. The judgment, the dismissal. She looked at my shoes, cheap. She looked at my dress, department store. She looked at my hands, no manicure. Oh, she said. Her voice was syrupy sweet, but it dripped with poison. The sister. Garrett talks about you sometimes. Nice to meet you, Sloane, I said. I extended my hand. She didn't shake it. She just held her champagne glass a little tighter. Garrett said you work in a hotel, she said. Housekeeping, right? Something like that, I said, dropping my hand. That's honest work, she said, smirking. Someone has to clean up the messes, I suppose. She turned away from me before I could answer, linking her arm through Garrett's. Babe, introduce me to that man over there, the one with the Rolex. Daddy says he's a potential investor. They walked away. My mother followed them like a puppy. I was left standing alone in the middle of the room. I felt the old familiar shame creeping up my neck, the feeling of being small, the feeling of being dirt. But then I looked up. I saw the crystal chandelier above me. I remembered the invoice I had signed for it last month. It cost $45,000. I own the light you're standing under, Sloane, I thought. You just don't know it yet. I needed a drink. I went to the bar. The bartender, a guy named Rick, saw me coming. His eyes widened. Miss B, he started. I shot him a look. Just a sparkling water with lime, please, and keep it quiet. Yes, ma'am, he whispered. He handed me the glass with trembling hands. I took my drink and drifted toward the edge of the room. I wanted to observe. I watched the Whitmores. Franklin Whitmore was holding court near the buffet. He was a tall man with silver hair and a tan that looked like it came from a bottle. He was wearing a suit that cost more than my father's car. He was talking loudly, gesturing with a cigar that wasn't lit. The market is volatile, I heard him say to a group of guests. But that's where the opportunity is. You have to be aggressive. That's what I tell Garrett. You have to grab the bull by the horns. My father was nodding enthusiastically, looking like he had no idea what Franklin was talking about but was terrified to admit it. Absolutely, Franklin, my father said. Aggressive. Yes, then I saw Barbara Whitmore, Sloane's mother. She was a bird-like woman, thin and jittery. She was wearing so many diamonds she rattled when she moved. She was currently criticizing the shrimp cocktail to a waiter. These aren't jumbo, she was saying. In Texas, we use jumbo. These are barely medium. I frowned. We sourced our shrimp from the best supplier on the East Coast. They were U-15s. They were huge. Something wasn't adding up. Rich people, truly rich people, didn't usually brag this much. They didn't need to shout about the market or complain about the shrimp size to prove they had status. They just were. I decided to do a little reconnaissance. I walked toward the side of the ballroom, near a heavy velvet curtain that separated the main floor from a service corridor. It was a spot I used sometimes when I was inspecting events. It was dark, quiet, and had a vent that carried sound from the other side perfectly. I stood there, sipping my water, pretending to admire a painting. A moment later, the curtain rippled. Two people stepped into the corridor on the other side. I couldn't see them, but I could hear them. It was Sloane and her father, Franklin. Keep your voice down, Franklin hissed. The booming, confident voice was gone. He sounded angry and scared. I can't believe I have to marry him, Sloane whined. Her voice was lower, rougher. The syrup was gone. He's an idiot, Dad. He tried to explain Bitcoin to me for 20 minutes. I wanted to scream. It's just for a few months, Sandra, Franklin snapped. Sandra, I froze. My hand tightened on my glass. I know, Sloane, no, Sandra sighed. But are you sure they have it? Look at them. The mother dresses like a clown. The sister looks like she cleans toilets for a living. They reek of poverty. Appearances can be deceiving, Franklin said. We did the intel. The credit checks showed consistent, large deposits into the parents' account for the last 5 years. Community Grant Foundation. It's steady money. And Garrett keeps talking about a family trust that unlocks when he gets married. He's lying to impress us, but the deposits are real. My heart stopped. The deposits. The Community Grant Foundation. That was me. That was my money. We just need them to sign as guarantors, Franklin continued. We need the collateral, the house, the future trust, whatever they have. Once they sign the loan documents for the joint venture, we strip the cash, pay off the Russians in Miami and vanish. I hate Miami, Sandra muttered. Can we go to Europe this time? Focus, Franklin growled. This is the last con. The Burns family is the perfect mark. Desperate for status, gullible, and sitting on a cash flow they don't understand. Just get the ring, get the signature tonight, and we're done. Fine, Sandra said, but if he tries to kiss me with tongue again, I'm charging extra. They laughed. It was a cold, cruel sound. Then I heard footsteps walking away. I stood there in the shadows, paralyzed. The room spun. They weren't rich. They were con artists. They weren't investing in Garrett. They were hunting him. And the worst part? The only reason they were targeting my family, the only reason they thought my parents had money worth stealing was because of me. My anonymous checks, my grant. I had tried to save my parents from poverty, and instead I had painted a target on their backs. If I hadn't sent that money, my parents would have looked like what they were, broke. And the Whitmores would have walked right past them. I felt a wave of nausea. But then the nausea turned into something else. Rage, cold, hard, diamond-sharp rage. They called me a toilet cleaner. They called my mother a clown. They called my brother an idiot. They were right about the idiot part, but that was my idiot brother. Nobody else was allowed to destroy him. I set my water glass down on a side table. My hand was steady now. I wasn't Sophia the sister anymore. I wasn't Sophia the victim. I was the CEO of Birch Hospitality. I was the woman who turned a rundown motel into a multi-million-dollar empire. I dealt with contract disputes, union negotiations, and hostile takeovers before breakfast. These two cheap grifters had walked into the wrong hotel. I checked my watch. 8:10 p.m. The speeches were scheduled for 9 p.m. I had 50 minutes. I walked out of the ballroom. I didn't look at my family. I walked straight to the service elevator in the back hallway. I pressed the button for the top floor, the executive suites. I pulled out my phone. "Wesley," I said when he answered. "Miss Burns, is everything all right?" "No," I said. "We have a code red. I need you in my office in 2 minutes. Bring the laptop with the secure server access. And call David, my forensic accountant. Wake him up if you have to." "What's going on?" Wesley asked, his voice tightening. "I have 2 rats in my ballroom," I said, "and I'm about to call the exterminator." The elevator doors opened. I stepped into the quiet luxury of the executive floor. I walked down the hall to my office, my heels clicking on the marble like gunshots. I wasn't going to just stop them. I was going to destroy them. And I was going to do it in front of everyone. I didn't panic. Panic is for people who don't have a plan. I had a plan. I walked straight out of the ballroom. I didn't look at my family. I went to the service elevator in the back hallway. I pressed the button for the top floor, the executive suites. I pulled out my phone and dialed a number. "Wesley," I said. Wesley was my general manager at the Monarch. He answered on the first ring. "Miss Burns, is everything okay? I saw you enter the party. Meet me in my office, now, and bring the laptop with the secure server access. We have a problem." 5 minutes later, I was sitting behind my mahogany desk. The sounds of the party were far below us. Wesley rushed in, looking worried. "What's going on?" he asked. "The Whitmores," I said. "Franklin, Barbara, and Sloan. I need a full background check, not the standard one. I want the deep dive. Criminal records, aliases, financial history, and get my forensic accountant David on the line." Wesley didn't ask questions. He started typing. "I overheard them," I said, pacing the room. "They called Sloan Sandra. They talked about paying off the Russians and a previous con in Texas. They're running a Ponzi scheme, or something like it, and they're trying to use my brother as a guarantor." Wesley's fingers flew across the keyboard. Searching Texas databases for fraud matching the description oil heiress scam. 10 minutes passed. The silence in the room was heavy. "Got it," Wesley said. His face was pale. He turned the laptop toward me. There on the screen was a mugshot. It was from 5 years ago. The woman looked younger with darker hair, but the eyes were the same. Cold, calculating. Name, Sandra Williams. Aliases, Sloan Whitmore, Sarah Jenkins, Samantha Roth. Wanted for wire fraud, identity theft, grand larceny. Status, fugitive. She hid a family in Dallas for $2 million, Wesley said, reading the file. She pretends to be an heiress, gets the family to invest in a fake property development, and then vanishes with the cash. Her parents are actually her partners. Franklin is actually Frank Miller, a disbarred lawyer. I looked at the screen. I felt a cold rage building in my chest. It wasn't the hot, messy anger I felt when I left home at 18. This was different. This was the anger of a CEO who finds someone stealing from her register. This was professional. "They think my family is rich," I said quietly. They think Garrett has access to a trust. They don't know the money comes from me. What do you want to do? Wesley asked. Call the police, we can have them arrested right now. I looked at the time. It was 8:15 p.m. The speeches were scheduled for 9 p.m. No, I said. If we arrest them now, it's too quiet. My family won't believe it. My mother will say I made it up to ruin Garrett's big night. Garrett will say I'm jealous. I stood up and walked to the window. I looked down at the city lights. They need to see it, I said. They need to be humiliated. They called me a stinky country girl. They called my family gullible marks. They walked into my hotel and insulted me. I turned back to Wesley. We're going to let the party continue, I said, but I want you to modify the presentation. You know the slideshow they have prepared. The one with the cute couple photos. Yes, Wesley said. I have a USB drive in my bag, I said. I'm going to load these police reports, the mugshots, and the bank fraud diagrams onto it. I want you to hack into the ballroom's AV system. When Franklin goes to make his toast, I want the screens to change. Wesley smiled. It was a sharp, dangerous smile. And the federal agents. Call the FBI field office, I said. Tell them we have Sandra Williams and Frank Miller on site. Tell them to wait in the lobby until I give the signal. I want the handcuffs to click while the music is still playing. I looked at my reflection in the window. The shy girl from Millbrook was gone. The victim was gone. Let's go crash a party, I said. I left my office with the USB drive tucked into my clutch. My heart was beating a steady rhythm against my ribs, not fast, just strong. I felt like a soldier walking back onto a battlefield, but this time, I had the heavy artillery. When I returned to the ballroom, the party was in full swing. The lights had dimmed, and the music had shifted to an upbeat pop song. People were dancing. Waiters were clearing dinner plates. I scanned the room for my target. I didn't want to talk to my parents. Not yet. I needed to look Sandra in the eye one more time. I needed her to confirm everything I already knew. I needed her to dig her own grave. I found her near the dessert table. She was alone for a moment, reapplying her lipstick in a small compact mirror. She looked bored. The mask of the happy fiancé had slipped just a little. I walked up to her. I moved silently, a habit from years of walking hotel halls at night. Enjoying the party? I asked. Sloane jumped a little. She snapped the compact shut and turned to me, her eyes narrowed into slits. Jesus, you creep, she hissed. Don't sneak up on people. Shouldn't you be cleaning up plates or something? Just wanted to congratulate you again, I said, keeping my voice mild. You and Garrett seem very compatible. You must be excited to join the family. Sloane let out a short, cruel laugh. She took a step closer to me. She smelled like expensive perfume and champagne, but underneath, there was the smell of desperation I recognized from the streets. Look, Sophia, she said, saying my name like it was a dirty word. Let's cut the crap. I see you watching me. I see you trying to act like you belong here, but we both know you don't. Is that so? I asked. You're pathetic, she spat. Garrett told me everything. How you ran away, how you failed, how you're just some lonely spinster who works in a hotel. You're an embarrassment to them. Honestly, it would be better for everyone if you just disappeared. Go back to whatever hole you crawled out of. She poked a manicured finger into my chest. It was hard. Nobody in this room cares about you, she whispered. Your mother tolerates you, your father ignores you, and your brother, he laughs about you. He told me you used to send them money anonymously. He thinks it's hilarious. He calls it guilt money from the loser sister. That hit me. It hit me hard. Garrett knew, or at least he suspected, and instead of being grateful he laughed. I kept my face stone still. I didn't let her see the pain. You're right, I said softly. I should leave. I don't belong in a place like this. Sloane smiled. It was a victory smile. Finally, some self-awareness. Go on, get out, don't ruin the pictures. She turned back to the dessert table, dismissing me as if I were a fly. I walked away. But I didn't leave. I walked straight to the audiovisual booth at the back of the room. The technician, a young man named Dave, looked up. He knew me. He worked for me. Miss Burns, he said, surprised. Dave, I said, take a break. Go get a coffee. I'll handle the board for the next 20 minutes. But Mr. Whitmore is about to give his toast, Dave said. I know, I said. I have a special presentation prepared. It's a surprise. Dave nodded. He didn't argue with the owner. Okay, Miss Burns, the system is unlocked. He left. I stood alone in the dark booth, looking out over the glittering crowd. I saw my parents laughing with Franklin. I saw Garrett holding Sloane's hand. They looked like a happy family. They looked like a lie. I plugged the USB drive into the console. The file loaded. Project Truth PPTX. I put on the headset to listen to the room audio. Franklin Whitmore or Frank Miller was tapping his glass with a spoon. The room went quiet. "Ladies and gentlemen," Franklin boomed. He had a great voice, a con man's voice. "If I could have your attention." He walked onto the small stage. A spotlight hit him. "Tonight is a celebration of love," Franklin said. "When my daughter Sloane told me she had met Garrett, I was skeptical. I am protective of my little girl. But then I met the Burns family. And I saw people of integrity, people of substance." My mother beamed. She actually dabbed her eyes with a napkin. "We are so proud to unite our families," Franklin continued. "And to celebrate, we have put together a little slideshow of the happy couple's journey." He gestured to the 3 massive screens behind him. "Hit it!" Franklin shouted. This was it. I hovered my finger over the enter key. "Goodbye, Sloane," I thought. I pressed the button. The music started. It was Unchained Melody. Very romantic. On the screens, the first image appeared. It was a photo of Garrett and Sloane at a beach. "Ah," the crowd went. The second photo. Sloane showing off her ring. "Ooh," the crowd murmured. I waited. I let them have 10 seconds of happiness. I wanted them to feel safe. I wanted Franklin to relax. Then I typed a command on the keyboard. Switch source. The music cut out abruptly. A harsh, static noise buzzed through the speakers for a split second. Then silence. The screens went black. "Technical difficulties," Franklin joked from the stage. "Always happens, right?" Then the screens flared back to life. But the romantic filter was gone. The images were stark, high-contrast black and white. The first image was a mugshot. It was massive, 10 feet high. Sandra Williams, holding a placard with a booking number. Her hair was messy, her makeup smeared, but it was undeniably Sloane. The room gasped. It wasn't a ripple, it was a wave of shock. "What is that?" someone shouted. Franklin froze. He turned around and looked up. His face went gray. The slide changed. Document, State of Texas Vs. Sandra Williams. Charge, felony fraud. The next slide. A photo of Franklin, but the name under it wasn't Franklin Whitmore. It was Frank Miller disbarred. The next slide. A complex diagram showing money moving from investors to Shell Company A to Cayman Islands account. The title of the slide was the PONZI scheme. The silence in the room was shattered. People were whispering, pointing, standing up. "Turn it off," Sloane screamed. Her voice was shrill, piercing. She ran toward the stage. "Turn it off, it's a lie, it's fake." Franklin was waving his hands. "This is a hack, someone has hacked the system." "Security, security." I leaned into the microphone in the booth. My voice boomed through the ballroom speakers, godlike and calm. "It's not a hack, Franklin," I said. Everyone froze. My voice filled the room. "And her name isn't Sloane." I stepped out of the booth. The spotlight operator, who realized something dramatic was happening, swung the light from the stage to me. I stood there in my simple blue dress, holding the microphone. I walked down the steps from the booth area onto the main floor. The crowd parted for me like the Red Sea. They stared at me. My mother's mouth was open. Garrett looked like he was about to vomit. "Sophia," my mother whispered. "What are you doing?" I ignored her. I kept walking until I reached the stage. I climbed the stairs and stood next to Franklin. He looked terrified, he knew. He looked at my eyes and he saw the CEO, not the cleaning lady. "This man," I said, pointing at Franklin, "is Frank Miller. He is wanted in 3 states for stealing retirement funds from elderly teachers." I pointed at Sloane, who was shaking at the bottom of the stairs. "And that woman is Sandra Williams. She has been married 4 times in the last 6 years. Each husband went bankrupt within 6 months." "You're lying," Sloane shrieked. She lunged at me. "Security," I said calmly. 4 large men in black suits. My head security team stepped out of the shadows. They didn't move toward me. They moved toward the Whitmores. At the same moment, the double doors at the back of the room burst open. FBI. "Nobody move." 12 agents in windbreakers swarmed the room. They had guns drawn but pointed low. The chaos was absolute. Guests were screaming. Franklin tried to run toward the back exit, but 2 agents tackled him before he made it 5 steps. Sandra didn't run. She just collapsed. She sat on the floor, weeping, her expensive dress puddling around her like a ruined wedding cake. I stood on the stage, watching it all. I felt clean. My brother Garrett walked up to the stage. He looked at the screens, then at Sloane, then at me. "Sophia," he stammered. How did you know? And how did you get security to listen to you?" I looked at him. I looked at my parents, who were huddling together, looking terrified that the FBI might arrest them too. I took a deep breath. It was time for the second reveal. "Wesley," I said into the mic. "Lights up, please." The house lights came up full brightness. The romantic atmosphere was gone. Now it was just a room. "I didn't just find this out because I'm smart, Garrett," I said. "I found this out because I protect my assets." "Your assets?" my mother asked, her voice trembling. I spread my arms wide. "Welcome to the Monarch Hotel," I said. "My hotel." Silence again, but a different kind, confused silence. "I own this building," I said. "I own the Birch Hospitality Group. I started as a maid, Mom. And I built an empire while you were busy being ashamed of me." I looked at my father. "Those checks you get every month," I said. "The grants, that's not luck. That's not Garrett, that's me. I've been paying your mortgage for 5 years." My mother's knees gave out. My father had to catch her. I looked back at the FBI agents hauling Franklin and Sloan away in handcuffs. Sloan looked back at me one last time. Her face was ruined by mascara tears. "You're a monster," she mouthed at me. "No," I said, loud enough for her to hear. "I'm the stinky country girl, and I just took out the trash." The aftermath of an explosion is always quieter than you expect. The police took statements. The guests, realizing the party was definitely over and that they were witnesses to a major crime, slowly filtered out. They whispered as they left, glancing at me with awe and fear. "She owns the place. Did you see her face? Stone cold. That was the most incredible thing I've ever seen." Finally, the ballroom was empty except for the staff, the FBI agents finishing their paperwork, and my family. My parents and Garrett were sitting at table 4. They looked like statues. Nobody was drinking the champagne anymore. I walked over to them. I pulled out a chair and sat down. For a long time, nobody spoke. Garrett was the first to break. He put his head in his hands. "She was fake. The whole time, she never loved me." "She loved your credit score, Garrett," I said. "Or what she thought was your credit score. She thought you were the rich one." Garrett looked up. His eyes were red. I feel like an idiot." "You were a mark," I said. "It happens, but you made it easy for them. You were so desperate to look important that you didn't look at the details." My mother looked at me. Her eyes were wide, searching my face like she had never seen me before. "You own this," she whispered. She touched the tablecloth. "All of this?" "Yes," I said. "But you left with nothing," she said. "You were just Sophia." "I'm still just Sophia," I said. "I just worked harder than you ever thought I could." My father cleared his throat. He looked ashamed. "The money, the monthly checks, that was you." "Yes," I said. "Why didn't you tell us?" he asked. "Would you have believed me?" I asked. "If I called you 5 years ago and said I was buying a hotel, what would you have said? You would have told me I was crazy. You would have told me to come home and marry a mechanic." They didn't answer. They knew I was right. "And besides," I added, looking at Garrett, "if I told you I had money, how long before you asked for a loan? How long before you tried to invest it?" Garrett flinched. "I wanted to help you," I said, "but I didn't want to be used by you, so I loved you from a distance. That was the only way I could survive." My mother started to cry. Real tears this time, not the performance tears from earlier. "I'm so sorry," she sobbed. "Sophia, I'm so sorry. We treated you, we were awful." I looked at her. I wanted to feel a rush of forgiveness. I wanted to hug her and say it was okay. But real life isn't a movie. The hurt doesn't just vanish because the check clears. "You were awful," I said honestly. "You made me feel small so you could feel big. You gave my necklace to a stranger. You ignored me for a decade." I stood up. "I'm not going to cut you off," I said. "I'm not cruel. I'll keep sending the checks because I don't want you to lose the house. But things are going to change." "Change how?" my father asked. "No more lies," I said. "No more pretending Garrett is the golden child. He needs a job, a real job, and he's going to start at the bottom." I looked at Garrett. "If you want to work," I said, "I have an opening at the Starlight Inn. It's housekeeping, minimum wage. You start Monday." Garrett looked shocked. "Housekeeping, but I'm your brother." "Exactly," I said. "So I expect the toilets to be sparkling." The next few months were strange. The story hit the news. Hotel heiress stings con artists at own brother's engagement. My face was on the cover of the local business journal. People started recognizing me in the street. I wasn't invisible anymore. Garrett actually took the job. I think he was so broken by the Sloan experience that he needed to be humbled. He scrubbed floors. He changed sheets. He complained for the first 2 weeks, but then he stopped. He started coming to work on time. He lost weight. He looked better. One afternoon, 3 months later, I was in my office. My assistant buzzed me. "Your brother is here to see you, Miss Burns." "Send him in," I said. Garrett walked in. He was wearing his uniform. He held a small velvet box in his hand. "Hi," he said. "Hi," I said. "Shouldn't you be on the third floor?" "I'm on break," he said. He walked to my desk and placed the box on it. "I found this. Mom had it hidden in her jewelry box. She took it back from Ashley years ago after they broke up, but she never told you." I opened the box. It was Nana Rose's sapphire necklace. I stared at the blue stone. It looked exactly the same. It brought back the smell of Nana's perfume and the sound of her humming in the kitchen. "I'm sorry, Sophia," Garrett said. His voice cracked. "I was a terrible brother. I let them treat you like dirt because it made me feel like the favorite. I was weak." I looked up at him. He looked tired but honest. "Thank you," I said softly. I touched the necklace. "I'm going to keep working," Garrett said. I kind of like the hotel business. It makes sense. If you work hard, things get clean, it's simple." "It is," I agreed. He turned to leave. "Garrett," I called out. He stopped. "If you keep your metrics up for another 3 months," I said, "I might have an opening for a shift supervisor. Don't make me regret it." He smiled. It was a real smile. "I won't, boss." My relationship with my parents was slower to heal. We went to dinner once a week. It was awkward. We talked about the weather. We talked about the news. They were careful with me, like I was made of glass that might explode. But one night, my mother reached across the table and held my hand. "You are remarkable, Sophia," she said. "I don't know how we made you, but I am so glad we did." It wasn't a perfect apology. It didn't erase the years of neglect, but it was a start. And for the first time, I didn't need her to say it to feel worthy. I knew who I was. I am writing this from the balcony of the Monarch Hotel. The sun is setting over the city, turning the sky a brilliant purple and gold. I am 32 years old now. I own 10 hotels. I have a team of amazing people who work for me. I have a family that is flawed, broken, but trying to be better. I wear Nana Rose's necklace every day. It reminds me of where I came from. It reminds me of the girl who left home with $200 and a broken heart. I started a mentorship program last month. It's for young women from small towns who want to start businesses but don't have the money or the support. I call it the Rose Scholarship. I tell them my story. I tell them about the cleaning. I tell them about the scrubbing. I tell them about the loneliness. And I tell them about the engagement party. I want them to know that their value isn't defined by their parents, or their partners, or the people who whisper about them at parties. Sloane Sandra is in prison. She got 15 years. Franklin got 20. They send me letters sometimes asking for forgiveness. I don't answer. I don't wish them harm, but I don't owe them my time. My time is expensive. My life isn't a fairy tale. I still have days where I feel insecure. I still have days where I hear my mother's old voice in my head calling me clumsy. But then I look around at what I built. I look at the empire of stone and glass that rose from my stubbornness. I realized that being the forgotten daughter was actually a gift. Because nobody was watching me, I was free to become whoever I wanted. While they were looking at Garrett, I was building a ladder to the stars. So, if you are reading this, and you feel invisible, if you feel like the mistake in your family, if you are the one sitting at the table with the smallest portion of chicken, listen to me. Let them underestimate you. Let them ignore you. Let them laugh. Use the silence to work. Use the shadows to build. Because one day you will walk into a room that you own, and the only person you will have to thank is yourself. While they look down, you rise. If you loved this story, hit like, subscribe, and tell me where you're watching from.